I still remember the moment, as if it happened only yesterday. I called my son David to ask about the wedding date. Instead of hearing his voice, I saw Olivia standing there in my living room. Her lips curved into a thin smile. She said, with a calm cruelty, "We already got married yesterday. We only invited special people. If you're watching this video, please like and subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my story of revenge from. I want to know how far it has reached." Her words pierced me like a shard of glass. For 3 years, I had paid their rent, bought every chair and table in their apartment, stocked their shelves with groceries, and yet I was not a special person. My throat closed as I whispered Olivia, "What did you just say?" She leaned back on the sofa I had bought for them and repeated with a sharper edge, "I said we already got married. It was only for special people." David finally spoke, his eyes fixed on the floor. He mumbled, "Mom, it was just a small ceremony. Only us and 2 witnesses. It was nothing personal. Nothing personal." The phrase slammed against my chest. I looked at my son, the boy I had carried through storms, the boy whose college tuition I had worked double shifts to pay. And now he avoided my gaze as if I were a stranger. In my bedroom closet hung the pale pink dress I had chosen for the wedding. I touched its fabric with trembling hands. I said softly to myself, this dress was meant for joy, but now it carries only humiliation. Next to it sat the polished shoes I would never wear, and the envelope, with $1,000 I had saved as their gift. I stepped back into the living room, my eyes drawn to the sofa where Olivia stretched comfortably. She looked at me as if daring me to protest. For a moment, I almost begged, almost pleaded to be included. But something inside me snapped. I said, in a quiet but steady voice I see now, "I was good enough to pay your rent. I was good enough to buy your groceries. But I was never good enough to be invited." Olivia smirked, brushing imaginary dust off her skirt. She replied, "We thought it would be simpler this way. Less drama. Less drama." The words echoed in my ears as my pulse thundered. I had canceled doctor appointments to save money for them. I had eaten beans and rice while sending Olivia $800 for her dress. And now they stood before me, rewriting my worth as if my sacrifices meant nothing. I pressed my palm against the wooden frame of the closet door, feeling the grain of the wood ground me. I said to myself, "You are not just a bank account. You are not invisible." That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table, the same table where I had once counted bills to cover their debts. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. But in that silence, something inside me shifted. Humiliation gave way to anger, and anger hardened into resolve. My story, I realized, would no longer be about exclusion. It would be about what I would do next. When I closed my eyes that night, memories flooded back like a river breaking its banks. I saw myself 20 years younger, standing behind the counter of the small-town library where I worked. The smell of old paper clung to my clothes. My hands were dry from shelving books, but I smiled because every paycheck meant David could have what I never had. I remember a winter evening when David was 16. The wind rattled the windows of our little house. He came into the kitchen with a worried look and said, "Mom, the school trip to Washington costs $300. I know we cannot afford it." I stirred the pot of beans on the stove, pretending not to show the pain in my chest. I told him, "Let me worry about that. You focus on your grades." That night, I went to the library director and asked for extra hours. He raised his eyebrows and said, "Helen, you already close the library 3 nights a week. Can you manage more?" I replied firmly, "I have to. My boy deserves this chance." Weeks later, David returned from Washington with a smile wider than I had seen in years. He hugged me and said, "Mom, thank you. I will never forget this." My tired bones melted in that moment. I believed my sacrifice had meaning. I remember another night when the rent was overdue. The landlord knocked on the door, tapping his clipboard. "Mrs. Parker," he said, "you are 2 weeks late. If this continues, I will have to ask you to leave." David stood behind me, his shoulders tense. He whispered, "Mom, I can quit school and get a job at the gas station." I turned to him quickly. "No, David. Your only job is to finish school. I will find a way." That week, I pawned my wedding ring. The gold band Robert had slipped onto my finger decades earlier. The pawnbroker waited and said, "I can give you 150. I forced a smile and nodded. That money covered the rent. My finger felt bare, but my son had a roof over his head. There were lighter moments, too. Summer evenings when David and I ate ice cream cones on the front steps. He laughed and said, "Mom, you are the best." I believed it then. His laughter was my reward. But sacrifice became a habit, almost an addiction. Each bill, each request, each crisis I answered with my own needs pushed aside. Groceries for him, secondhand shoes for me, his college textbooks new and shining, while I mended my work dress again and again with trembling hands. I once told him during a quiet dinner, "David, all I want is for you to build a life where you never struggle the way I did." He nodded, chewing his food, and said, "I promise, Mom, I will make you proud." As I sat at the kitchen table years later, those promises echoed inside me. I had given and given, until my own soul felt hollow, and now that hollow space was filling with a new truth. My sacrifices had not bought love. They had bought silence. The first time Olivia asked me for money, her voice was coated with sugar. She came into my kitchen carrying a basket of laundry I had folded for them, and said, "Auntie Helen, I hate to bother you, but my car needs new tires. It will cost $400. David's check does not come until next week. Could you help us? Just this once." I looked at her, standing in my kitchen as if it belonged to her. The smell of laundry soap clung to her blouse. I told myself she was young, maybe nervous about asking. I said softly, "All right, Olivia. I will write a check. Just make sure the car is safe for David." Her smile widened instantly. "Thank you, Auntie. You are like a second mother to me. A second mother." The words felt warm in the moment, but later that night as I balanced my checkbook, I noticed the gap where my grocery money should have been. I ate canned soup for the rest of the week. Not long after, another request arrived. Olivia called on the phone. Her tone was light, playful. She said, "Helen, the landlord is raising the rent. Could you add an extra $100 each month? Just until David gets a raise?" I hesitated. My hand gripped the receiver tightly. "David, are you there?" I asked. His voice came faintly in the background, tired and hurried. "Mom, it's fine. Olivia has it under control." Under control. That phrase sank into my chest like a stone. Slowly, Olivia became the voice I always heard. David stopped asking me directly. Instead, Olivia appeared with carefully chosen words, each one polished to sound like gratitude. One afternoon, she placed a glossy bridal magazine on my kitchen table. The cover sparkled with lace and diamonds. She tapped a page showing a beaded gown. "Auntie Helen, isn't this beautiful? It costs $800. I could look like a queen walking down the aisle, but we just don't have enough." I stared at her. The sunlight from the window lit up the magazine, the white dress glowing like a promise. I thought of my own wedding years ago, how Robert had slipped a simple gold band on my finger. No beading, no sparkle, just love. I asked quietly, "Olivia, why not choose something simpler?" She tilted her head and said, "Everyone will be watching. David deserves a bride who looks perfect. Don't you want that for your son?" My heart twisted. She had turned the question back on me, making refusal sound like neglect. So I handed her the money. Later, when I looked into my bank book, the numbers told a story I didn't want to face. Month after month, Olivia's requests grew. New furniture, unexpected bills, a sudden medical emergency. Each time she used the same phrases. You are like family. You are our rock. We don't know what we would do without you. I repeated those lines to myself in the quiet of my bedroom. I wanted to believe them. But as the months passed, a seed of doubt began to grow. Their gratitude was always followed by another request. Their thanks lasted only as long as the ink on my checks. One evening, as I cleared their empty plates after dinner, Olivia leaned against the doorway and said, Helen, you are amazing. You have given us everything. Someday, it will all come back to you. Her eyes glittered, but not with love. I saw calculation in them, sharp and cold. At that moment, I realized the truth I had been avoiding. I was no longer a mother. I was an open wallet. The morning of the wedding should have been filled with joy. Instead, my closet was heavy with silence. The pale pink dress I had chosen hung untouched, the tag still pinned inside. I had polished my shoes until they gleamed, placed them neatly by the door, and set aside an envelope with $1,000 as a gift. Every detail was ready, but the invitation never arrived. When I called to ask, Olivia's voice cut like glass. She said, We already got married yesterday. We only invited special people. Special people. I stood in the hallway gripping the phone until my knuckles turned white. I whispered Olivia, I have supported you both for years. How could you not tell me? Her reply was smooth, rehearsed. Auntie Helen, it was very intimate. Just us and our closest. You understand, don't you? David finally spoke faintly in the background. Mom, please don't make this harder. It was just easier this way. Easier. Easier for them to erase me from the most important day of my son's life. That night, I opened my closet and touched the dress. The fabric felt cool beneath my fingers. I whispered to myself, this cloth was meant to carry joy. But now, it carries shame. The next day, I scrolled through social media and saw what they had tried to hide. Olivia, in her white gown, smiling as champagne glasses clinked around her. Her parents stood proudly beside her, her siblings laughing in the background. I studied the photographs, my chest tight, realizing every seat was filled except mine. The worst part was the dress, the one she wore. I had given her $800 last month for what she called personal expenses. Now, I saw where it had gone. I had unknowingly financed the gown that marked my exclusion. I remember sitting at my kitchen table, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. I pressed my palms against the wood and said out loud, Helen, you are invisible. You paid for the feast, but you were not even given a chair. A knock on the door startled me. It was my sister Diana, who had driven from Chicago, expecting to attend a wedding. She stepped inside, carrying a small gift wrapped in silver paper. Her eyes searched the empty house. Where is everyone? Helen, I told her in a trembling voice they were married yesterday. I was not invited. She gasped, covering her mouth. My God! After everything you've done for them, I could not answer. Tears spilled silently as I pushed the untouched gift toward her. Take it back, Diana. There is no wedding here. The room felt colder than winter. The pink dress still hung in the closet, its empty sleeves like arms that could never embrace me. And in that heavy silence, humiliation burned deeper than grief. That was the day I realized I had not only lost respect in their eyes, I had given it away, dollar by dollar, until there was nothing left. That night, after Diana left, I sat alone at the kitchen table. The envelope with $1,000 still lay unopened in the drawer. The pink dress still hung in the closet, mocking me. I felt as if the walls of my house were closing in. The humiliation was so sharp it kept me awake until dawn. When the first rays of light crept through the curtains, I pulled out my checkbook, bank statements, and a pile of old receipts. My hands trembled as I spread them across the table. I whispered to myself, Helen, see exactly what you have given away. Count every penny. I wrote carefully in a notebook. Rent at $500 each month for 3 years. That alone was $18,000. Food and groceries, $200 each month. Another $7,200. Furniture for their apartment, $1,200. Olivia's so-called emergencies, like the medical bill of $800 and the car loan of $2,500. The air conditioner repair, $600. Birthday gifts, Christmas gifts, anniversaries. At least $3,000. I added the numbers again and again, hoping I was wrong, but the total remained the same. $33,400. I stared at the sum until the ink blurred through my tears. That was Robert's inheritance. The money he had left for me to live my final years in peace. That was my pension, the savings I had gathered coin by coin after decades at the library. I pressed my forehead to the cool wood of the table. My voice came out in a whisper, this is the price of your foolish love, Helen. Images flashed before me. Olivia's bright smile as she took the check for her gown. David's silence as he let her speak for him. The photographs of their wedding, where I was invisible. Each memory cut deeper than the last. But something else rose inside me. Anger. Not wild anger, but cold, steady anger that hardened my spine. I looked into the hallway mirror. The tired face staring back at me was lined with wrinkles, but the eyes burned with something unfamiliar. Determination. I said to the reflection, you are not a servant. You are not an ATM. You are Helen Parker. The sound of my own voice startled me. For years I had whispered excuses, begged for scraps of gratitude. Now the words rang clear, almost like a vow. I folded the bank statements and placed them back in the drawer. My hands no longer trembled. For the first time in years, I was not thinking about their needs. I was thinking about my own survival. That morning, I brewed coffee and sat at the table without rushing to call David or Olivia. I sipped slowly, savoring the quiet. The dress in the closet no longer mocked me. It reminded me of what I would never allow again. The awakening was not gentle. It was forged in betrayal, but it was real. And it marked the beginning of a new chapter, one where my dignity mattered more than their demands. A week after the humiliation, the phone rang. I saw Olivia's name on the screen. For years, that name had meant another request, another sacrifice. My first instinct was to let it ring. But something in me whispered, pick it up. Face her. Her voice came fast, almost trembling. Auntie Helen, the rent is overdue. The landlord says if we do not pay this week, we will be out on the street. You forgot to transfer the money. I held the receiver tightly, my pulse steady. For so long I had rushed to the bank, skipped my own meals, even pawned my wedding ring to make sure David and Olivia had a roof over their heads. But now I felt none of that urgency. I answered calmly. Olivia, didn't I warn you that I only help special people? Silence crackled through the line. I could hear her breathing quicken. She stammered, what do you mean? We are your family. You have always helped us. I straightened in my chair. No, Olivia. For 3 years I gave you rent money, food, furniture, even your wedding gown. And in return, you shut me out of the most important day of my son's life. From now on, I will not fund your life. Her tone sharpened. David will not understand this. He needs you, I said firmly. David is 35 years old. He does not need his mother's pension. He needs his own backbone. She tried again, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Auntie, you are like a second mother to me. Please, just this one last time. I closed my eyes and saw the dress in my closet, the photographs on social media, the $33,400 I had spent. I replied, you lost the right to call me mother when you told me I was not special. The silence that followed was heavier than any insult. I could almost feel her shock traveling through the line. Finally, she whispered, "You will regret this." And then the call ended. I set the phone down slowly. For the first time in years, my hand did not shake after a conversation with her. The kitchen felt brighter, as if the morning sun had broken through clouds I had carried on my shoulders. Later that afternoon, David called. His voice was tense. "Mom, Olivia says you refused to pay the rent. What is happening?" I answered with calm clarity. "What is happening, David, is that you and your wife are adults. It is time you take care of yourselves." He tried to protest, but I cut him off. "No more transfers. No more excuses. I have done enough." He was silent, and in that silence, I felt a strange power returning to me. It was not cruelty. It was survival. That evening, I brewed coffee and sat at the same table where I had once counted dollars for their needs. This time, the money stayed in my account. The coffee tasted richer than ever. It was my first act of defiance, my first step toward reclaiming dignity. And though small, it felt like a revolution. It was a gray afternoon when the knock came at my door. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and opened it, expecting a neighbor. Instead, David stood there with Olivia at his side, both dressed far too formally for a casual visit. Behind them was a man in a gray suit carrying a leather briefcase. David's smile was strained. "Mom, we need to talk." I stepped aside slowly. The three of them entered my living room, a space I had kept tidy and warm for decades. The man in the suit sat at my dining table without asking. He opened his briefcase, spreading out papers as if my home were his office. Olivia's voice was syrupy but sharp. "Auntie Helen, we are worried about you. You have been making strange choices lately. Strange choices." I crossed my arms. "You mean refusing to keep paying your rent?" David sighed heavily. "Mom, please. This is not about money. It is about your well-being." The lawyer cleared his throat. "Mrs. Parker, I am Mr. Fisher, a family attorney. Your children have expressed concern that you may no longer be fully capable of managing your finances." My stomach turned. I looked from David to Olivia, searching their faces for shame. "I found none," I said firmly. "I have managed my finances for over 40 years. I raised a son alone, paid off a house, worked until retirement, and now, you tell me, I am incompetent." Olivia leaned forward, her manicured hands folded neatly. "We only want to help. If you sign these papers, David can take care of everything. Your bills, your bank accounts, your savings. You will not have to worry anymore." I glanced at the papers. The words, "power of attorney," glared at me. I asked David softly why. "Why would you do this to me?" He avoided my eyes. "It is just temporary, Mom. Until you are less confused." Confused. My chest burned. I reached for the papers, and for a moment, Olivia's eyes lit up as if victory was near. Instead, I tore them straight down the middle. The rip echoed through the room louder than any shout. I threw the pieces into the trash. I said clearly, I am not confused. I am not incompetent. What I am is finished with being used. Olivia's mask slipped for an instant, anger flashing in her eyes. She hissed, "You cannot do this to us. We have obligations." I raised my voice. "Your obligations are not mine. Not anymore." The lawyer gathered his briefcase quickly, flustered. David stood frozen, torn between anger and shame. Finally, he muttered, "We only wanted to help." I opened the door wide. "Then help yourselves. Out." They hesitated, but the steel in my eyes left no room for argument. One by one, they walked out. The door closed behind them with a thud that shook the silence. I leaned against the wood, my chest heaving. For the first time, I had faced them head-on and refused. The fear was still there, but beneath it ran something stronger: freedom. The morning after their visit, I woke with a knot in my stomach. The torn papers in the trash were proof enough they would not stop easily. If they could bring a lawyer into my house once, they could do it again. I brewed coffee and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the steam rising from the cup. For years, this table had been the place where I counted bills for David, where I planned birthdays for Olivia, where I cried quietly so no one would see. But now, it became my war room. I picked up the phone and dialed Mr. Whitman, a lawyer I had known years ago when I managed Robert's estate. His calm, steady voice came through the line. "Mrs. Parker, I remember you well. Tell me, what is happening?" I poured it all out: the secret wedding, the $33,000 spent, the lawyer in my house, the demand to sign away my control. He listened without interruption. And when I finished, he said firmly, "Helen, this is elder financial abuse. You are not alone. Come to my office. We will protect you." Relief swept over me like a tide. For the first time, someone called it by its name: abuse. Later that afternoon, I walked to Eleanor Brooks's house, my neighbor with kind eyes and a quiet strength. She invited me in with a smile. I told her everything, my voice shaking at first but steadying as the story spilled out. When I finished, Eleanor clasped my hands. "Helen, I went through the same thing with my daughter. They try to twist love into chains, but you can break them. You are stronger than you think." Her words warmed me more than the tea she served. I realized I had something David and Olivia could never understand: an ally who cared for me, not my money. That night, as I locked my doors, I felt something shift inside me. Fear was still there, but it no longer ruled me. I had a lawyer on my side. I had a neighbor who believed in me. And most of all, I had myself finally awake, finally ready. The battle was only beginning, but I no longer stood alone. 3 weeks later, the summons arrived. David and Olivia had filed a petition in family court, asking that I be declared incompetent and placed under David's guardianship. My hands trembled as I read the words, but then I folded the paper and set it down. This was the war Mr. Whitman had warned me about. On the day of the hearing, I wore my best black suit. As I looked into the mirror, I whispered, "Helen, you are not here to beg. You are here to fight." The courtroom smelled of polished wood and cold marble. David sat at one table in a crisp suit, Olivia beside him in black, as though she were mourning. Their lawyer, the same Mr. Fisher, shuffled papers with practiced confidence. The judge entered, and the hearing began. Fisher spoke first, painting me as a confused old woman manipulated by outsiders. He said I had cut off support without reason, isolated myself, and installed unnecessary security out of paranoia. His words twisted my awakening into sickness. Then Olivia took the stand. She cried as she said, "Auntie Helen has always been like a mother to me. But lately, she has changed. She told the court I was hostile, unstable, and unsafe on my own. Lies, polished like silver." When it was my turn, Mr. Whitman guided me gently. I told my story with steady voice: the $33,400 given, the humiliation of being excluded from the wedding, the lawyer in my dining room, the demand for my signature. I said I stopped supporting them because I finally understood they wanted my money, not me. Whitman produced receipts, bank transfers, and statements from Eleanor and my new friends, each one confirming my clarity. Dr. Moore, the psychiatrist, testified that my mental state was excellent. Even Mr. Green, the pharmacist, admitted he had been tricked into signing a misleading paper. When I finished, the courtroom was silent. The judge leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. He said clearly, "Mrs. Parker is fully competent. The petition is denied." Olivia gasped. David's face turned pale, and Fisher quickly packed his briefcase. I walked out of that courtroom taller than I had in years. My freedom was intact. My dignity was intact. And their plan had failed. The evening after the verdict, I sat alone in my living room. For once, the silence did not weigh on me. It felt clean, like fresh air after a storm. I brewed a cup of tea, carried it to the porch, and watched the sun dip below the horizon. For the first time in years, I felt no need to check my phone. No dread of another demand from David or Olivia. Eleanor came over carrying a small casserole dish. She smiled warmly. "You did it, Helen. You stood up to them." I set the tea aside and hugged her. I whispered, "I never could have done it without your friendship." Later that week, I met with Mr. Whitman again. He advised me to change the locks permanently, open new accounts, and update my will. His words were practical, but beneath them lay something deeper: respect. He saw me not as a helpless old woman, but as a capable client reclaiming control. I followed his advice. I also treated myself to something small yet symbolic: a new set of paintbrushes. For years, I had put aside my love of painting because money and time were always drained away for others. Now, I set up a small easel by the window, and with every stroke of color, I felt life flowing back into me. Weeks passed. News reached me that David and Olivia had moved into a smaller apartment. Olivia had taken her first real job. David was struggling, learning to stand without the crutch of my money. I did not rejoice in their hardship, but I also felt no guilt. For once, their lives were theirs to manage. One evening, as I walked through the park, a thought came to me, clear as glass. Love is not proven by how much you pay. It is proven by respect, by presence, by care. What I had bought with $33,000 was not love, but illusion. I lifted my face toward the sky and whispered, "Robert, I am free now." The wind stirred the trees as if answering. From that day forward, I chose myself first. I traveled, I painted, I laughed with new friends. And each morning, when I looked in the mirror, I no longer saw a woman defeated. I saw Helen Parker, whole and unbroken. And that is the lesson I carry. True love cannot be bought. Respect cannot be forced. And dignity, once reclaimed, must never again be surrendered. If this story touched you, please like and subscribe, and share in the comments where you are listening from. I would love to know how far my story has reached. I still remember the moment as if it happened only yesterday. I called my son David to ask about the wedding date. Instead of hearing his voice, I saw Olivia standing there in my living room. Her lips curved into a thin smile. She said, with a calm cruelty, "We already got married yesterday. We only invited special people." If you're watching this video, please like and subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my story of revenge from. I want to know how far it has reached. Her words pierced me like a shard of glass. For 3 years, I had paid their rent, bought every chair and table in their apartment, stocked their shelves with groceries, and yet I was not a special person. My throat closed as I whispered Olivia, "What did you just say?" She leaned back on the sofa I had bought for them and repeated with a sharper edge, "I said we already got married. It was only for special people." David finally spoke, his eyes fixed on the floor. He mumbled, "Mom, it was just a small ceremony. Only us and 2 witnesses. It was nothing personal. Nothing personal." The phrase slammed against my chest. I looked at my son, the boy I had carried through storms, the boy whose college tuition I had worked double shifts to pay. And now he avoided my gaze as if I were a stranger. In my bedroom closet hung the pale pink dress I had chosen for the wedding. I touched its fabric with trembling hands. I said softly to myself, this dress was meant for joy, but now it carries only humiliation. Next to it sat the polished shoes I would never wear, and the envelope, with $1,000 I had saved as their gift. I stepped back into the living room, my eyes drawn to the sofa where Olivia stretched comfortably. She looked at me, as if daring me to protest. For a moment, I almost begged, almost pleaded to be included. But something inside me snapped. I said, in a quiet but steady voice I see now, I was good enough to pay your rent. I was good enough to buy your groceries. But I was never good enough to be invited. Olivia smirked, brushing imaginary dust off her skirt. She replied, "We thought it would be simpler this way. Less drama. Less drama." The words echoed in my ears as my pulse thundered. I had canceled doctor appointments to save money for them. I had eaten beans and rice while sending Olivia $800 for her dress, and now they stood before me, rewriting my worth as if my sacrifices meant nothing. I pressed my palm against the wooden frame of the closet door, feeling the grain of the wood ground me. I said to myself, "You are not just a bank account. You are not invisible." That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table, the same table where I had once counted bills to cover their debts. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. But in that silence, something inside me shifted. Humiliation gave way to anger, and anger hardened into resolve. My story, I realized, would no longer be about exclusion. It would be about what I would do next.